I'm here this morning. Today, I actually get to speak. I've been hosting all my friends, and today I get to speak, which I am super excited about. So, let me just share a little bit about who I am and what I love doing. I am a mum of two small kids. I am a writer. And I love to encourage people around finding their story and finding their voice. It's something that I've done for a very long time. I really love to help people to discover their why and to lean into that. And so pretty much everything that I do surrounds that space, to be able to help people to explore their story. So this morning I wanted to talk from my latest book. It's actually my 9th book, and it is called Dear Creative Self. And where the book came from, I actually went through a season in my 20s of 10 years that I was single. And in the midst of that, I wrote a book which is called Dear Single Self. And it was the letters that I write to myself. I'm trying to find if I've got a copy. Here's Dear Single Self. It's the letters that I wrote to myself to reinvent what loneliness and isolation and being a single woman looked like. And it was such a fun thing to do, to write letters to myself and to re-explore the way that I spoke to myself about singleness. And so then coming out of that, I decided I wanted to make it into a trilogy. And so the second book of the series is called Dear Creative Self. And I'm in the midst of writing the third book of that trilogy, which is called Dear Future Self. And it's the way we speak to ourselves in the future. And all of those ideas came before this internet space was really prevalent. And in the midst of that, now the whole idea of writing letters to ourselves has become quite a phenomenon that is talked about a lot. So Kiki K recently put out a whole heap of envelopes where you could write letters to yourself about all different things. There's heaps of people in the Instagram space that talk about writing letters to ourselves, which is really fun. But today what I wanted to do is really talk about this whole idea of the letter of creativity and how powerful creativity can be. And what I think is really interesting is yesterday I read out the beginning of this book to our group who gathered yesterday, and it felt so prophetic into the moment that we're in, that it was talking really clearly about the season that we are now in. And the spheres of the creative process that come from the book come back to these different things. Number one, being emotional well-being. Number two, connection and collaboration. Number three, rest and sleep. Who wants to have more rest and sleep in this season? I definitely do. Put up your hand if that is you. Technology. We're all facing the technology space right now because we're having to log into things. We're having to think about things differently. And I know that that can be difficult and I know that can be challenging. But let me tell you something, friends. There's actually great grace and opportunity in that space for you. And if we allow ourselves to fail forward with it, you know, like I'm looking at my friend Jody, who's launching a podcast this Easter. I'm sure that there is technology issues for her in that space. But as we face it, as we show up, as we do something different, we open the doors to a whole new wide world of opportunity before us to be able to share and explore the story that is on our heart. So let me tell you a little bit. I'm going to share my screen here. So my book is all about, can you see that? Can someone wave and tell me?
No.
No, because I haven't pressed share. There we go. The book is all about the creative process. And so I have a quote from the book here which says, "You are enough and you have something to say that has never been heard before, simply because it is filtered through the sheer tenacity of your own story." Do you know, I have people tell me all the time, I can't start that business, I can't write that book, I'm not going to do that retreat, I'm not going to do that event at the end of the year when things get back a little bit to normalcy. I can't do that because someone else is doing it. Do you know what? There is no one else that has the story that you have. There is no one else that has the idea that you have, because it is filtered through your own experience, your own life experience. And in the midst of that, there's an amazing grace there. And that's why I can categorically say that somebody needs your story. Somebody needs your story, and your story brings with it something that is powerful. So as we lean into the beauty of our own story, there is power there, because it is filtered through the tenacity of what you have had to overcome. And we have had to overcome so much in our story. Whether your story is one that's full of a lot of depths of lows or lots of highs, there is still lessons within the depths of that story that can help people. So today, coming from the spheres of these creative processes, I want to help you to implement these processes in your everyday at the moment, because we're in the midst of a pivot season, and this pivot season has the capacity to be able to bring out the dreams that are deeply embedded in our life, and to bring them forth in a way that we have never seen them before, because we have never sat on the precipice of the change that we are now experiencing as a culture, as a world, as a society. The world has never seen what we are now currently seeing. So the spheres of the creative process that I've found come back to emotional well-being. Our emotions are powerful things in the midst of the creative process. And if we just suppress our emotions, if we just ignore our emotions, if we don't give space to voice our emotions, then we will find that they will come back and haunt us in different ways. And creativity is a powerful way to be able to process emotionally. So today, I said in all of the different spaces that I've talked about today, is I'm going to give you some tools to be able to journal today, to be able to help you really release some of the stuff that's happening emotionally. Connection and collaboration is really important. What we are doing today is not just about me speaking. It's about us connecting in. It's about us learning from one another. It's about us seeing face to face. I found something really interesting over the last couple of days on book bus shelters across our city. There's a campaign called Look Up, and lookup.org.au is a scientific study that talks about the power of looking up away from our phones. And if you've heard me speak before, I speak about a time when I was sitting on the freeway in Perth, and I looked across to Canning Highway Bridge. And on the Canning Highway Bridge platform for the train, there was 100 people standing on the platform. 99 of them were looking into their phones. They were looking down. And there was this one girl looking up. And I wanted to wave to her. I wanted to say, hello, fellow sojourner of the creative looking up life. What are you thinking about? What are you imagining? Because the power of imagination in this space is profound. And you know what? We can spend the whole of today looking in our phone and looking at the news and looking at all the bad reports and looking at all the whinging and looking at all the complaining, or we can look up. We can look up and we can look into one another's eyes, and we can find a way to connect and collaborate and do something that's powerful. The power that is in this moment is this opportunity for us to be able to release the dreams and release the writing and release the creative ideas. I'm going to take my jacket off. I'm getting fired up. To be able to release what is within us. And what is within you is gold. What is within you is powerful. There is something that you can bring to this planet that no one else can bring to the planet. And that's why collaboration is important. And that's why I live my life collaborating with people. I live my life connecting people, because as we connect, as we empower, as we resource one another, there is beauty and absolute gold that is found in that space. We can criticize one another, we can hold one another down through competition and comparison, or we can encourage one another. And I live my life encouraging women to find their voice, because there is something powerful found in that connection. The next thing that I want us to do in this season is to really come back to our rest and our sleep, to really surrender to rest. And what does rest look like? What does deep rest look like? It looks like trust. It looks like releasing old stories. It looks like surrendering to a process of a routine that we can find that is a powerful thing. Technology, I've talked about already. Innovation. Innovation is the capacity to be able to enact the creative idea that is within you. To innovate. You can innovate by what's in your cupboard. And all the people that have bought hundreds of packets of pasta, they are going to have to innovate in this season. But you can innovate. You can take one word, and from that one word, you can create something innovative from it. And that is the power of the creative process. Pioneer. To pioneer is the capacity for you to be able to do something fresh and something that hasn't been seen before, to pioneer something different. And the last thing that I think is the most powerful part of the creative process is that whole space of spirituality and a sense of purpose. When we lean into that sense of spirituality, it absolutely changes the way that we enact in that and the way that we lean into. So let me talk a little bit about my spirituality and my sense of purpose and where that comes from. A quote from the book says this: space, time, and refreshing is an integral part of the process of reflection. This is what Dear Creative Self is about. And you know what? We have more space. Maybe it's locked down in a house. We have more time. And we have the capacity to allow this time in our life to be refreshing. And it's an integral part of the creative process. This is a quote from Essay Talks, and he says this: you need a break every once in a while to enjoy the everyday. And you need the everyday to enjoy the break you take every once in a while. And that's why I think we can actually reframe this season by going, you know what? Everything's different, so let's change. Let's actually lean into the creative process of doing something different, and let's find a way to be able to do that differently. So this morning at 7 o'clock, we got our family up, we went to the beach. There was no one on the beach, and we walked the beach, and I jumped in the ocean and I had a swim. It was freezing. Was it uncomfortable? Yes. Did I love it? Absolutely. Because I was shocking myself into being in the now. Be in the now. Don't be in the past. You can lean towards the future, but be in the now. What does the now look like for you? How can you surrender to the now and what is happening in the now, and to be able to use this as a time for capturing the beauty that is in your life? Your story. We all have a story. You have a story. I have a story. And I believe there's power in your story. And as we surrender to learning and rewriting the narrative of our story, we rewrite the messages that we send ourselves. So let me read to you one of the first chapters of my book in emotional well-being, because particularly at this time, I feel like our emotions are the space that we are getting challenged on. So listen to this. Reframe the messages that we send ourselves. The way that we speak to our creative self shapes and forms a powerful narrative in our creative worlds. How are you speaking to your creative self? I was 6 years old and I was a part of a local theatre show. The lights, the audience, and creativity coming alive completely took my breath away. I can still smell the dust in the air and the sparkling temptation of the lights. My mum was an actor and she loved the power of a good story. She had just arrived in this small coastal town and was looking for a place to belong. We went along to an audition, and from that moment on, we were in 2 or 3 shows a year for the next 20 years. We found belonging in a powerful way, and this community impacted my sense of self and the creative prowess. Celebrations of life transitions, parties, and birthdays were shared with our theatre crew. It was this part of my life that brought great story and community to my childhood. From musicals to plays, I have constantly immersed myself in storytelling, and I love to watch people sing on a stage and the way that musical theatre compelled people in their imagination and their creativity. The opening night of my first show was one filled with so much excitement and emotion. I was only in year one at school. And my favorite doll accompanied me everywhere I went. As the curtain rose and the song floated out to the audience, my little heart was beating so fast. I slipped away from my mum backstage and I found the hallowed ground. I can hear the chorus chanting as I remember this memory from over 35 years ago. The makeup table called me, and the mirror surrounded by lights shined brighter than a Christmas tree. Enter the angelic choirs. Without anyone noticing, I fixed up my makeup with blue eyeshadow across my forehead and red lipstick on my cheeks. I had drawn all over my face with eyeliner, and then I slipped back into my position, ready to run on stage and do my part. I could hear the sniggers and the laughs throughout the audience, but I loved it. I was hooked. There was a made-up like little clown with blue eyeshadowed pony, and my heart raced at the conversation between the audience and the creative on stage. We all have a story from our past that we are telling ourselves, and this informs the letters that we write to our creative selves. Often we want to walk away from the mess that we have created and never remember those dialogues again. And the chapter goes on to talk about how I had this interaction with the director, and I got absolutely busted for running to the makeup table and covering myself in makeup that wasn't meant to be there. And what it did is it created this letter to my creative self, and it was this powerful story from my childhood where I've had to learn to rewrite the letters to our creative self. Fyodor Dostoevsky, I'm so sorry I just crucified his name, but how could you live and have no story to tell? Do you know that there are little vignettes of stories from your childhood that if you leaned into them, there's lessons that are informing the way that you speak to yourself about creativity today? I love 2 Corinthians 3:2-3 from the Passion Translation that says this: "For your very lives are our letters of recommendation, permanently engraved on our hearts and recognized and read by everyone." As a result of our ministry, you are living letters written by Christ, not with ink, but by the Spirit of the living God, not carved onto stone tablets, but on the tablets of tender hearts. I've had to learn to rewrite some of those letters that have been written onto my heart. How about you? How do you speak about creativity? When you've produced something, do you look at it and go, you know what? That's awesome. Or you know what? That needs a bit of work. But do you do it with a smile on your face? Or are you producing and creating something creatively that you then look at and you go, you know what? That is so crap. And the way that we speak to ourselves about creativity completely changes the creative process. If I go back to what Anne was talking about yesterday, it actually comes back to the critical left brain and also the creative right brain. And both have a place. But the way that we speak to ourselves about creativity, we can still be constructive. But we need to shift the way that we criticize ourselves, because we get stuck in the process of creating because we're speaking to ourselves with a negative and a critical voice that completely changes the way that we speak to ourselves. I kind of feel like that moment when I went on stage was a little bit like, oh, it's shifted the photo around. You can't see it. My little daughter, when she was little, we had this moment where she'd had like a full-on glue party with tile glue, and I found tile glue everywhere. It's like that moment of, oh my goodness, I've been caught. But the way that I spoke to her in that moment actually impacts the rest of her life and the way that she speaks about creativity. Psalm 18:24 says this: "God rewrote the text of my life when I opened the book of my heart to his eyes." There's this part in our emotional resilience and the part of us where we actually are impacted by the way that other people speak. the way that people have spoken to us, the way that teachers have spoken to us impacts the creative process. And that's why I think journaling is so powerful, because it's a rewriting, it's a restoring, it's a restoring. And I found this quote, and this quote is actually a really important quote that is super interesting. Let me show you it here. Think about the word destroy. Do you know what it is? De-story. Destroy, de-story. You see, and restore. That's restoring. Do you know that only 2 things have been proven to help survivors of the Holocaust? Massage is one, and telling their story is another. Being touched and touching, telling your story is touching. It sets you free. And that's from Francesca Leah Block. She's an author. But I absolutely love that reframing of that word destroy. And at the moment, we're actually in a space where a lot is being destroyed. There is a lot that is being de-storied. I said last week that I believe that there's been this great leveling across the world. And is that a good thing? No, it's not. But good can come from that. That is the restory. That is the restoring. That is you being able to tell your story. That is you being able to express your story. And you know, this social media space and this online space that we sit in is a powerful place for you to be able to tell your story. And when you tell your story, the transaction that can happen from there is this growth in our emotional well-being. Because as we restore, as we restory, as we restore what is happening, there's this power that happens in that. And what I love about this quote as well, particularly people who have come from devastating times, is these 2 things. Number 1, massage. It comes back to our physicality. You know, as I walked the beach today, as I got in the water, no, I can't go out and get a massage from someone in Bali like I was planning to in 2 months' time. But I can massage my body. I can be physical with my body. I can give myself a massage on my feet. I can ground myself in my body. A lot of what Mish was talking about on Friday. I can find ways to move my body. I can find ways to, you know, like Taylor Swift, like just shake out the stories that we're holding in our body, move our bodies, shift our bodies. Oh, Chelsea, massages can come from our husbands. Can you tell my husband that? It's a great opportunity for us to be able to release what that is. But secondly, there is power in sharing your story. There is power in the way that we communicate with one another. And that's why I keep showing up today. As you girls write songs, you are sharing your story. You are giving movement to your story. Joni, as you write blogs and you empower other mums, you find ways to be able to share your story. There is healing there. As you do your podcast, Jody, as you release that podcast and as you write your story, there is power found there. And the power starts within us. There's this movement that happens in our emotional well-being when we find a way to be able to communicate and connect. It is a powerful thing. I think he heard me. I think he heard me. He just bought me a coffee. Thank you. Thank you. That was not planned. But I am very grateful. They said that you should massage me. So.
Tell them that I don't get paid enough.
Did you hear that? It's hilarious. Okay, now I'm distracted. Okay, so let me tell you this. The definition of a narrative is a spoken or written account of connected events, a story. And whether you think you're a writer or not, whether you think you're creative or not, there is power in the way that we write to find healing. Right now, the emotions that are stored in your body can be released through journaling and connecting different parts of the story. You can find perspective there. You can find the answer that you're looking for in the expression of your story. Whether you're a verbal processor or not, the capacity for you to be able to do that well is redefining the narrative of what is happening for you. So here is the story writing process, girls. The way that we write a story changes the narrative and the impact. Let me have a little drink of my coffee. You know, that's the pivot. The pivot is actually how we're writing the story. You know, Heather Jane was talking to us earlier on, just in the hang zone in the lounge room beforehand, and she was saying there's good. There is good. The way that we reframe what's happening right now actually helps us pivot. Kirsten, in your business, the way that you pivot right now is reframing the story. Yes, you work in the hospitality industry. Yes, people may struggle with like all of the hygiene, all of that that's happening. That is the story, right? But you can reframe it. You can reframe the story and you can bring something powerful to this space, and you need to change the way that you speak about the opportunity that's before us and change the narrative, and the impact that's going to come from that is a powerful one. So here are 5 steps to writing, and they're really simple steps. This is like writing for a non-writer, okay? And it's to the acronym of WRITE. W, what do you want to write about? Name it. So for example, when I'm writing a book, often what I'll do is I'll just have one word. So if you want to write a blog, I'll just have one word in the middle, then I'll brainstorm out of it. If you don't want to journal, you can just mind map. As you mind map, it completely changes the way that you think about something, because straight away you're giving yourself all these different thought processes that come around it. I have books and books and books of mind maps and opportunities where I just write like random stuff, and I'll just go, okay, there's an idea, and then I'll mind map out of that idea. There's something about allowing myself to just explore out from that without having to frame it into a sentence. So if you're feeling confused in this season and you're not sure what to do, on the first day, Roma was like, just come back into yourself and go, okay, Holy Spirit, what do you want from me today? Really lean into that. But the way that I do that is I just brainstorm out. I'm just like, okay, let's mind map out. Name something that you want to write about. Secondly, R is this: review or reflect on it. Close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and then focus. And that's what Mish was talking about on Friday, is the power of our breath, is being able to just really relax ourselves, you know, like emotionally and emotional well-being right now. One of the best things you can do if you are feeling an emotion and you're not sure how to name it is you can just take time to just breathe, be curious. You could write down what's frustrating you. I'm stepping into marriage counseling right now. You can write down what's frustrating you. Do a mind map out of it. Just giving release to that might actually stop a conflict when we're living in small closed-in corners with lots of people. But being able to review and reflect on it, take some deep breaths and then write, it's a powerful thing. That's why I just take one scripture and I go, okay, I'm just going to review or reflect on this one scripture. I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to focus. And then I'm going to go into I, which is about being curious. I'm going to investigate my thoughts and feelings. And you know what? Sometimes we can actually stop thoughts from coming because we're writing for someone else and we're worried about who is going to read it, rather than just allowing the thoughts to come and to be curious with them. And that's where Anne was talking about this left brain, right brain thing. You know, it's like she does the science of it. I do the application. It's like, you know, when we start being too critical with ourselves, we actually lose this capacity to be able to allow ourselves to think differently. You know what? You can change. You could be a completely different person. Over this next month, you could decide every day to do something really small that will bring transformational growth and change in your life. I've been tagged in so many posts of people that are saying, this book was written in the midst of a plague, and this idea was written in the midst of a massive like cultural shift. And there's so much that can happen in this space because it's a time of shift, it's a time of transformation. The next thing is this: I want you to time yourself. I think what I find when I'm teaching writing, often what happens is you'll come out of a little motivational time with me and you'll be like, I'm going to write for 2 hours. And then you don't write it again for another 3 weeks. What I want you to do is just 5 minutes. I want you to set a timer for 5 minutes every day. My beautiful friend Jody is been across Lent. She's been doing a time of solitude and silence for 15 minutes every day. She sets a timer on and she just sits in silence for 15 minutes, not scrolling her phone. I don't know how she's going with that now. Her husband's working from home and her kids are homeschooling. But 15 minutes. Do you know what 15 minutes of solitude could do for you in this time? Do you know what 15 minutes of writing could do for you in this moment? Just taking time to reflect is a powerful thing. So that's T. E is I want you to encourage yourself. And that's where Anne was talking about sitting in another seat, you know, and it's like actually we could speak to our mean self or we could speak from an encouraging self, you know, like when my kids bring me their writing, I'm not like, that is so crap, that is so boring. And often that's the way that we speak to ourselves. Maybe you're having to reinvent what your work looks like online and you put out an Instagram post and you're like, and then you go back and you read it and you're like, that is so crap, that's terrible. I think that critical voice actually stops us from truly being our true, real, authentic self. Because what we do is we start editing ourselves and editing our thoughts for other people rather than allowing those thoughts to flow through. So in your story, let's change the narrative. Let's change the way that we speak to ourselves. And the powerful way to be able to do that is to really explore all the different roles that we play. So I told you that we were going to do some writing today. So grab a pen, grab a piece of paper. I'm going to have a coffee. I want you to do a mind map for me, okay? And in the middle, I want you to write your name or to write me. And out of that, I want you to have all different like lines. And I want you to write all the different roles that you play in your own story. You got it? And what I want you to do is I just want you to start writing all the different roles. And we have all different roles. Like I did this a couple of years ago and it was so powerful. I don't know if you can see that. So it says me, it says I've got a husband, I work, I'm a writer, I've got my tribe, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter. It's got all the different spaces of all the different parts of the roles that I play. Start to write out all those different roles that you play in your story. And I've missed all your comments because I've been like preaching away. So I'm going to go read all your comments. Okay. Write out all the different roles. Do you know that all those different roles that we carry often come with so many different obligations? And some of those roles actually become a really negative voice in our creative process. Now what I want you to do is I want you to write yourself a really simple short letter in one of those roles. So say it's wife, right? Or sister. I'd be like, hey, Amanda, the sister, you're doing a great job in encouraging your sister right now. What is it that you need? Write yourself a little letter that comes from that role that you play. Might be the pastor, it might be the worker, it might be the yoga teacher, it might be the writer, it might be the daughter, might be the friend. Hi, Karen, I haven't said hi to you yet.
Hi, sorry, I'm a bit in and out.
That's totally fine. No pressure. Sometimes our emotional well-being in our space of reflection and creativity can just be stuck because we're playing a role that we actually just need to come back into ourselves. And taking time just to write ourselves a short little letter. Lots of you are writing, so I'm going to be quiet. Who let the extrovert out? Oh, who let the extrovert out? So that's just a really simple tool that we can use is writing ourselves a letter. So maybe as a mum, you're feeling super frustrated right now, you know. It's actually go towards the genre or the role that you're playing in your story. Write yourself a letter from that and be moved into a place of self-compassion. Oh, so funny. Hi, Chelsea. My poor friend Em dropped something over a couple of days ago, and she's like standing, she's introvert, she's like standing 2 meters away from me, and I'm just like, and then I text her afterwards, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I feel like I just like dumped about 100 different conversations on you. And she's like, yeah, I could tell you hadn't seen anyone in a couple of days. So there's this opportunity for us to be able to have some writing exercises that can just really help us really quickly. You can gain perspective. That's like a 5-minute writing exercise, right? But it's an opportunity for you to be able to quickly go, okay, reframe the message that we're sending myself in that role in that way, and to just really be moved with self-compassion, which is a powerful thing. I've got another thought for you here. How do you use writing to bring healing into your story? I think there's something really interesting about the power to connect our heart, so our soul, with our hands, and to be able to explore and to release. And I think that really comes back to journaling for me. Journaling is a powerful tool for us to be able to just release some of the stuff that's being locked and held captive by obligation, by shoulds, by can I really say that? Is it okay to say that? I think allowing ourselves to release some of that then really brings a really beautiful space for us. So what I wanted to help you do today is to give you a tool which has actually come from Japan, and it's called the Naked Method of Self-Reflection. And those who came on our Bali retreat would know that I taught this in detail. And it's a really powerful thing for us to remember in this season, and it's a really powerful tool for self-reflection. So you can do self-reflection in all different ways. I do it through a devotional. I read a scripture and then I really come back to an examine of what that scripture is. But this is a beautiful way for us to be able to be self-reflective right now. Allowing ourselves to have a thought, allowing ourselves to release things that no longer belong in today, to be able to lean into that. So naked is a Japanese word that means looking inside. And though a more poetic translation might be seeing oneself. The way that we grow and understand ourselves is the way that we use writing to heal. Self-reflection and self-awareness is one of the greatest tools a leader can have. Self-awareness means that we can write something and build a bridge from that thing that we've written to be able to help others. So for example, I would assume, because I've known Elaine for 20 years and the way that she writes, is there would be a moment of journaling for her where she's had this idea and she's like, I'm thinking about the word courage and how do I explore the word courage? And maybe there might be a really personal thing that she can't share publicly, but she feels really challenged that she needs to be courageous. And what does that look like? And through self-reflection and self-awareness, she's then building a bridge from that place to be able to help other people to be able to walk across that bridge, so that the blog is not actually personal, but it's still authentic, because she's creating this place where it's an openness to be able to help others that would come from that. And if you're running a business in this season, actually creating ways to be able to take your story and build a bridge out from that story to help other people is a powerful tool for connection. Everyone's yelling online right now. If everyone could, they'd be writing in capital letters. And it's really hard to find that traction of who your audience is and to be able to really draw your audiences. But as soon as you create a place where you are creating a bridge between your story and someone else's story, straight away the language of story creates a bridge that we can walk across. So self-awareness is the capacity for you to be able to go, I feel this. I'm being curious with that thought in my own life. How can I build a bridge from this? What are the lessons that I'm learning from this to be able to help someone else? And in my writing course, my online writing course, I've got a whole session on this. And it's the way that we take our own thoughts and we build a bridge from those thoughts to be able to connect with someone else. But if you were to do something every afternoon or every night across this season of the next month, you could ask yourself these questions and you would be using the naked method of self-reflection. So question one is this. So write this down. And it's a really great opportunity, especially when our culture is hoarding, people are in fear, people are in scarcity, they're not living in abundance. This is the first question that you ask yourself to do a little bit of journaling. You could just answer it with one thought. What have I received from someone today? Because you know what? As humans, and particularly because we live in such a self-orientated society, we will be spending most of the day thinking, how can I get my needs met? But self-reflection helps us to go, actually, someone else has given to me today. So what have I received from someone today? My husband brought me a coffee. The moment that I do that, that creates perspective, that creates space in our life, because we're like, you know what? I actually have received a lot today. Yes, I am in quarantine. Yes, I am self-isolated. Yes, I am in lockdown. Yes, the world is in pain. Yes, a lot is happening across the world. But what have I received from someone today? Because it brings it back personally. And it's a beautiful way for us to be able to just really quickly come back into that place of abundance and gratefulness, and for us to be able to go, actually, there's a lot that is not great, but there's a lot that is beautiful too. That's that clinging to what is good. The second question, write it down. What have I given to someone today? And I'm not saying this to big note myself. It's actually just a way that I live my life. But last week, when I lost 6 months of income, I spent the whole of last week giving stuff away. I was like, I am moving in the opposite spirit. I am stepping into abundance. I am giving stuff away. I'm creating. My husband calls it the river. He's like, where does being a river, babe? Where does being a river? Because you can't be a river and not be moved to somewhere new. There's a beautiful, beautiful part of generosity that leans us back into this place of growth and being able to give away. And so the question too in the naked method of self-reflection is this: what have I given to someone today? As soon as we find a way to be able to lean into that generous spirit, it actually reminds us we're not going, okay, what am I hoarding? We're going, how can I give? As soon as we give, girls, it creates space. There's something that happens within us when I give encouragement. You know, I love living in the land of encouragement. I spend my time on social media encouraging as many people as I can. Do you know why? It creates space in my own heart for more. It's not a selfish thing, but it's definitely a holding space thing. What have I given to someone today? And this last one is actually a really great tool, especially when we live in a society that is quite self-obsessed and a little bit narcissist. Question 3 is this: what difficulties or troubles have I caused today? It allows us to lean into that place of repentance, you know, where we just go, you know what? I'm not perfect. Maybe I did say something I didn't need to say to my family. Maybe I got frustrated, and it's okay to feel frustrated, to be curious with where that frustration is coming from. But from an emotional well-being place, for us to really acknowledge maybe where there's shame, where there's stuff that went a way that we didn't want it to be able to let go quickly. You know, earlier last week I spoke about just being in a season where we let go quicker, where we let go of stuff, you know. Like something happened yesterday, which actually wasn't a big deal, but I had every opportunity to be offended. And someone asked me to take something down that I had posted. And you know what I did? I just went, yeah, cool. I'm not holding on to it, because I could make this into something, but I don't need to. I don't have the time to. So rather than creating and holding and controlling, what about creating that space where I go, you know what? I'm going to let it go. Let it go. I'm going to acknowledge it and let it go. Because in this moment when we're all in each other's space, we're all in each other's pockets, we don't have the freedom to be able to just go to the park with our kids. What's a way that you can acknowledge quickly? So let's go back through those 3. I hope this is helping people. It is question 1, what have I received from someone today? So straight away, rather than going, I can't get this, I can't get that, I can't do this, we go, okay, let's live in gratefulness. What have I received from someone today? And do a little journaling excerpt from that. Secondly, what have I given? So bring it back to yourself. What can I give to someone today? And thirdly, what difficulties or troubles have I caused today? So in this space of journaling, it's okay to write a few words, and it's okay to write several pages. You just write at your own pace. There's times when I just write one word and that's all I've got. And there's other times where I write several pages, and that's okay. But the thing I want to encourage you around is actually just doing a short amount of time and use journaling to be a powerful tool for healing in this season of immense change. Secondly, journaling. Don't worry so much about what you're writing about. Just focus on taking the time to write and giving it your full attention. So rather than sitting with the pen going, okay, what am I writing? What am I writing? Just allow the flow to come. And as you unlock that flow, there'll be power that will come in it. One of my favorite writers, and she's on Instagram actually. She's like super uncool, but she's super cool. Her name is Julia Cameron. And she has writing exercises, which is called The Artist's Way. And she does live on the new agey kind of side, but there's some really beautiful parts of it. And what she does is she talks about creating a morning writing practice, which is just, she calls them morning pages, where she just gets scrap paper and she just writes out. And what it does is it just unlocks something within us where we're able to communicate. And because we're not spending as much time in communication or in community as what we were before, I think the power of writing in this season is even more present than ever before. The next thought for you, let me have a look at these over here. The next thought for you is, don't worry about how well you write. The important thing is to write down what makes sense to you and what comes naturally. So don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about grammar. I'm going to say it again. Don't worry about grammar. That's what an editor's for. Give yourself permission to reframe the way that you write in a way that helps you to release what is coming naturally to you. Try to write. Try to write with a voice where you're able to release. And I think often our writing becomes stilted and bad when we're thinking too much about being good. Does that make sense? When we're so focused on our writing being good, our writing ends up being bad. Just look at it in a way that we're able to just be able to talk like you are talking to a friend. And that's why reframing the message that we send to ourselves is actually really important. And here is my last thought to you about journaling, is write as if no one else will read it. This will help you avoid putting on a show rather than actually writing authentically. And that's where Anne was talking about our authentic self versus our false self. And I think sometimes we can end up writing for the people who we think we should be a good girl for, rather than actually going, okay, I'm going to really surrender to this process of writing with power and opportunity in that. So our time is over, and I wanted to invite us open for some questions. If you have to go, you are welcome to go. I got a bit fired up and I got us doing some stuff there. But if you've got a question for me quickly, go for it.
Are you going to post the PDF version of what you just showed us in the group?
I totally can.
That'd be great. Thanks.
It's one of my sessions from our 5-day retreat that we do, and it's amazing. So I will put up those questions so that you can go back and use them.
Okay, thank you.
No worries, Carolyn. Who else has got a question for me?
I have a question. How do you when you're how do you suggest when you're defining your story, but you feel like it is entwined with other people's stories and you don't feel like you have the permission to share someone else's story?
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm making myself clear, but
no, I do.
like,
I think it's the difference between what's your story and what's somebody else's story and being safe. It actually comes back to that whole idea of being safe and being a vault for other people's stories, but your story impacts other people. And in my writing course, there's this session where I talk about me. So there's the part of the story that's yours, right? Then commissioning that story out from me to we. So there's the personal part of it, but you don't have to actually name people. It's actually your part of that story. But as soon as you bring it to we, so it might be, I went to the beach this morning and I really didn't want to. Have you ever been to the beach and you haven't wanted to go? So I could have had a fight with my husband. So I've still referenced, but I'm bringing it to a place of we. So, and often the way that we do that is through a question. So it's, I didn't feel great this morning. I got all grumbly with my family. I didn't actually. I'm just like making it up. It'd be fine if I did. But say I had a big fight with my husband. I never talk about that in my writing, but I can still reference the impact of that story and how it had it on me. But as soon as we bring it to we, that's that bridge I'm talking about. So I go to we, then this part's really important. What's the point of sharing the story? Is the point just about sharing my story, or is the point building the bridge? Because if there's no point bigger than your story, then it's just going to be a self-fulfilling whinge, right? So it's like my story, we, question, why am I sharing this story? Then the next part comes to application. What is the application from that lesson? So it could be me, I didn't want to go to the beach this morning. I was grumbling at my family. Had a fight with my husband, but I didn't. Have you ever asked to do something that you didn't want to do? The point. We can do hard things. Application. When are you going to do something that you don't want to do and you feel uncomfortable for? And then this is the last part of it. You ready? Commission. So you're commissioning it out to us. When we do hard things, the world starts to change. So it goes me, my story. And yes, other people might be a part of that, but how do we bring it to we? Question, the point. Why are you actually telling the story? Are you telling this story to hurt someone, or are you telling this story to help someone? Application, how can the point of this story make a difference? And then from there, commission to the greater call. What is it that we can commission other people from? So straight away, you're taking it from your story and you're building into the bridge of helping other people.
So good. Thank you.
No worries.
Can I ask something in regard to that?
Yes.
So I'm writing our story, which is actually our family story, and it's quite involved. But over the past year, I've been writing, and I've been getting information from some of the other family members. And I had one family member, an older uncle, who said, "You don't tell it. Don't tell this story. You know, it's not abuse or anything like that. My dad had schizophrenia and mental illness, and my brother had a breakdown, but he got miraculously healed. And so it's very hard when you've got someone comes in and actually just about took me out. You know, just thought, I can't do it. I can't tell the story. But then I thought, you know what? I just had to go. I understand that he must have pain because he was the protector in the family. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. And even my sister, for a long time, she was saying, oh, it's not your story to tell. But she was 10 years younger than us, so she doesn't realise that my brother and I were very close in that thing. So now she's going, it's time, Steph. You've got to write the smaller version, tell your story in song, you know, and she's encouraging me. She's turned. It's taken about 3 years for her to turn, but she has. But it's really hard, like that uncle, what do I do with that? Like, I don't know what to do with that.
And I don't think that anyone...
he said...
I don't think there's anyone that can answer that for you, Steph.
Yeah.
I think that's the only person that can answer that is you, and to really come back to what is right for your circumstance and for your story. Yeah, and to do it in a way that's safe.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I wouldn't, you know, but for me, it's not about my story. It's about telling the miraculous, what's happened in our family is an absolute miracle, you know, how God just brought us through this whole journey. So that's my, you know, the commissioning is I want to tell people that this is the God who we, you know, who we serve, you know. So it's a bit of a hard one because that actually, it almost took me out, you know. If I think about it too much, it still makes me feel like, shuts down, you know.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. And I think, you know what, the other thing that's really hard is this generational shift towards everyone having a platform and everyone having a voice. And it's a very unique thing that's happened over the last 10 years. And everyone accesses that from a different place.
Yeah.
So I think as long as we're landing it in a place of commissioning and the why of why we're telling the story, I think that there's power in that.
Yeah.
Well, we have gone over time, and I'm sorry. That's why it took me like a week to get here, because I'm ready to go. But I'm actually doing again tomorrow. I've got another whole session planned for us tomorrow. Invite friends in. I just want to encourage you. Thank you so much for being here. And encourage one another. Come back to the group. There's ways that we can do that. And I have a business strategist coming on Thursday. I think it's Thursday or Wednesday. I can't remember. Everything's blurring, guys. But her name is Donna Bates, and she's amazing. She's got a session for us. So particularly those who are in businesses and need help from a creative business point of view, she's coming on to do a strategy from that. And did you have any thoughts? I've gone over time. Okay, I might leave it. I don't know where she's gone. We've lost lots of people, but that's all right. Bye, everyone. Sorry to land it randomly. See ya.
See ya.
Journal away.